Hello and welcome to another edition of the Horror Debate. I am Jeff Rowdy Jake here, and with me, as always, Michael Mandy.
And this week we're going to be reviewing The Zodiac from 2005, directed by Alexander Bulkley.
That's easy for you to say.
It wasn't easy for me to say.
Let me tell you, man, I'm scared to death, or I was scared to death to watch this movie, man, because you know we've been to the Zodiac before, right?
Yeah, the Zodiac Killer movie, directed by Yuli Lamel.
Yeah, and that name will forever be etched in the back of my head is to never see another movie by this guy, okay?
Oh, yeah, it was bad.
But no, this one is totally different. You know, the plot basically follows the Zodiac Killer from his first escapades into murder throughout several of his kills, not the entire career, or what we would consider a career of a mass murderer, right? But you know, I dug this flick, dude.
Really?
I dug it, and let me tell you why I liked it. There's many reasons, but the main reason is that I grew up in Vallejo, first of all.
Where this all took place.
This all took place in Vallejo, California, and I saw so many landmarks because they filmed it in Vallejo. And I saw so many landmarks while I was watching this movie. I'm like, oh, I know what that is. That's the old Social Security building, and they turned it into the police department. And you know, and you know, there was so many times I was like, wow, man. But it's not just that. It really kind of brought you back. This movie's pacing was really cool. It fit perfectly because it took me back to kind of a simpler time. You know, I was born in 1971. The first killing, I believe, was in 1968.
Right.
But it was close enough, and you really got that old Vallejo town vibe.
Yeah, it was a small town back then.
Yeah.
And this movie, also, they must have chosen a film stock or something, because it did have kind of a early 70s sheen look
Absolutely.
to it. They weren't using high definition digital cameras on this.
Right. I actually watched it in high definition. I was going to talk about that later because of how interesting it made the film look. You know, I'm not used to watching like films that look kind of old in this really new technology that makes everything shimmer and shine and look all nice and fancy, you know?
Bright and crisp.
Yeah. But this movie was really cool. I thought, you know, I know you mentioned as soon as you watched it that you thought maybe some of the acting may have been a little weak. I noticed a couple of things in the movie that bothered me.
Rory Culkin was one of the things. He looked like he was asleep throughout most of the film.
Rory was supposed to be the kind of like, in my opinion, he kind of seemed like the overprotected child who had like this weird kind of relationship with this girlfriend. It wasn't really like a full-on. Well, they were young; they were like 12, right? Yeah. But it was kind of a strange. He was resisting her, and she was all over him, and you know, kind of a weird vibe there. But I didn't think he was ineffective. I just thought that he was probably told to play a part that was a little more subtle.
Very subtle.
Because I've seen him in other stuff, and he was great. Yeah. You know,
he looked asleep in that one.
Well. You know, I think we started out this movie, and again, because I grew up there, I was really interested in the subject matter, so definitely that kept me going. But even myself, I started feeling like, oh, this could be really slow.
It did have a slow pace to it.
But, that's at the beginning of the movie, but then I started to realize, hey, this fits. This plotting fits. Because it wasn't like this guy went out there and nailed like 15 people and then, killed
in 1 week or something like that. No, this guy took his dear sweet time. It was and then 7 months later, and one, and then,
Yeah, and I got a little bit more of a personal story with this whole thing because the first victims our family actually knew.
Wow.
And even deeper than that, one of my best friends in the world, his father was a Vallejo policeman at the time that this all happened, and guess what? He found the first 2 bodies.
Wow. That's really
interesting. So we're really close to this whole thing, and it really interested me because of that. But even more so, the lead male in the film, the Inspector Matt Parrish,
Justin Chambers,
in my opinion, couldn't have done a better job. He was awesome because he had that old style kind of feel to him. He was a young guy on the force. Obviously
sometimes the pressure of the job was getting to him, so he'd be kind of nasty to his wife.
But obviously a chain smoker. I mean, did you see a scene in this movie? I could have sworn
a lot of people were smoking in this.
Well, no, I could have sworn he was in the shower smoking, man. I mean, every scene this guy was in, there was a cigarette lit, close to it.
Did you notice in this film the progression? Because the course of this film takes place in a 2.5-year period.
Yeah, something like that.
When the first scene, William Mapother. Yes, relation to Tom Cruise.
He's not akin to Oxide Payne, is he?
No, I hope not.
Okay, just checking it out, man.
He's the reporter. He starts out just being a little local type TV newspaper reporter, but then each killing, his job description gets a little better. Next thing, he's standing in front of the courthouse.
Yeah.
And then by the end of the movie, he's on the TV
Right.
reading the news. I just thought that was a little interesting. Well, it shows job progression.
I love the vibe that he got when they were sitting at the little bar and he tried to buy the cops a drink, even though he was screwing them, basically, giving out all this information in the media. And he's trying to buy this guy a drink to smooth it over, and he gets it right back at him. You know what I mean? I thought that was really good.
The director was the bartender.
The director was the... See, I did not know that. I did not know that. I started watching the special features on the DVD and kind of got sidetracked, but I from what I saw, I just love just seeing old
Vallejo.
Old Vallejo. Before, it had all its issues and everything. When I was growing up, kind of a free-spirited little town. I just really got into
They even
that.
kind of mentioned that, too, that Vallejo was a mix between old 50s style conservatism, but a few hippies thrown in.
Yeah.
It is on the outskirts of San Francisco.
We had a lot of fun in that town, man. A lot of fun in that town.
Okay, now some of the bad parts about this film.
Well, again, I saw some continuity issues. There was one in particular bad cut in this film. I don't know if you caught it, but I'm sitting there watching it, and I noticed that the wife, who was played by Robin Tunney, as a matter of fact, she was sitting at the table talking to the husband. And in one scene, before the cut, she was getting really emotional. And she was like shaking and kind of, trembling. She was scared. Because
was this the part when he was mad at her for locking the door?
No. This is when they were sitting at the table having a civil conversation. When he came home, he went right to the booze. He wasn't drunk already.
Right.
That's when he came home. Well, you're talking about when he came home completely wasted, right? No, this was actually before that. But it was kind of weird because she was sitting there trembling, and then the cut happens, and a new angle comes in, and she's steady as a bone, man. And it's like it just
maybe they must have had to edit.
It looked completely disjointed,
or maybe switch the scenes around.
Possibly. It just made it feel weird. It made it feel like, oh man, we missed like a whole section of argument there. I want to know what they're arguing about. One
of my problems with this film is because it's based upon a true story, and they actually followed the events fairly close. This is a kind of like what they did in Titanic. They took a real situation but stuck fictional characters into this real situation.
Well, that's right, and I think they changed names. And I think it even actually says that when it comes on that they changed some names and changed some place names in Vallejo to protect the whatever.
But I mean, so the thing is that they stuck these fictional characters. So when we're talking about the cops and arguing and drunk and everything, we're not saying real Vallejo people.
Right. We're not trying to imply that they're
fictional
drunks.
characters. These are fictional characters. Okay, now since it's based upon true events, and this movie actually follows the true events fairly closely. They've got the letters correct and the situations and everything. And one of the problems is they never solved this case. So there really was no ending to the film.
Okay, but they didn't solve the case in real life, so what are they supposed to do?
Right, that's what I'm saying. So the movie kind of lets you, the viewer, down because there's no
I don't think so.
ending. And what really let me down was the movie ended before he got... he started out in Vallejo doing all these things, and then he moved into San Francisco. And he started doing the killings in San Francisco, and he wrote letters to the San Francisco Police Department, the police department, lawyer Melvin Belli,
right?
And then he went down to Pacheco Pass in 152. The real Zodiac got a lady and her baby and took her for a ride, and she escaped, and he went chasing in the field after her.
Right.
And then the next day he wrote a letter saying, "I gave a lady a real interesting ride last night." This movie ended before San Francisco got involved in that. And I'm going, oh, man, that's the best part.
Well, you'd be talking about a 3-hour or 4-hour movie, dude. I mean, what you got to end it somewhere. And I think I was talking about this with my wife when we were watching the film. It's like, I thought they did a pretty good job getting the pertinent stuff in there.
I think maybe they might have ran out of money.
Well,
it's first-time director.
The viewers may have run out of patience before they got to all the parts you wanted them to get to. I mean, I don't know. I can't see this movie going 2.5, 3 hours. I would have sat through it, but I don't think most people would.
Yeah. Well, maybe they could have trimmed down a little bit of, Rory Culkin looking at...
looking sorry at his girlfriend. And you're probably right. But, I mean, what was the movie? 1 hour and 40 minutes, and it felt maybe just a tad short to me.
It was 97 minutes.
Yeah, it was. See, 1 hour and 40. Who you talking to, baby? Okay, so what I'm thinking is that if you're going to go for a 2-hour, 2.5-hour movie, you're going to lose the patience of a lot of people, and I just don't think they wanted to do that.
Yeah. I would have sacrificed a little bit of character development for more action.
Well, I'd agree.
Oh, wasn't that creepy when the couple was at Lake Berryessa?
Yeah.
And you see the couple in the foreground, and way in the background, this is when Zodiac puts on that black hood and the mask, and you just see him walking down the hillside behind them and far away, and he goes down below that hillside, so he's now out of your sight line, and then he pops up and he's a lot closer. I was just going, that was cool camera work.
And the whole executioner outfit was a different vibe, wasn't it? I was like, you know what intrigues me about this whole thing is that it's kind of very mathematic. The way he did his encoding of his letters and there's a lot of substance to figure out there, and it was cool on the DVD. I got to tell you, they have his actual codings on the DVD, and then you press a button and you can switch it to what it actually says. Yeah. And what we noticed is that there's no rhyme or reason. Well, of course there's rhyme or reason, but there's no pattern that we could figure out as far as the lettering, because it starts with the letter I on like the first one, and it ends with the letter I, but the two symbols are different. So obviously he was using some sort of a shifting, like a mathematical shifting, to figure out what that I would look like as it got later on in that message. And you know what I mean? It's like once I get to here, I have to shift it to another character. Totally tripping me out. I mean, that's a brain tease if I ever saw one.
All right. So what are we rating this one, Jeff?
I'm loving it, man. I'm not loving it enough to give it a 5, but I'm loving it definitely enough to give it a 4.
I don't love it enough to give it a 4. I thought it dragged a lot. I
think it was appropriately dragged for the time it was shot.
Yeah. And I was just kind of let down. I mean, it's all about the Zodiac, and they left out the final ones. I mean, I wasn't expecting an ending, where they capture a guy and drag him into jail. Right. But you stopped when there were still a few more to go.
Exactly.
So that kind of bummed me out. So I'm going to give it maybe 3.
Okay, fair enough.
3. All right, I'm Michael Mandy. He's Rowdy Jeff. We'll talk to you next week at the Horror Debate.